What's up, everybody? This is Riley from Nerd Network coming at you with a trailer breakdown for the brand new Captain Mar-Vell teaser trailer that just got released today, or I guess Tuesday, September 18th, if you're watching this later. Anyway, we're going to take a look not only at the connections that this movie has to the greater MCU as a whole, but we're also going to take a look at little nods towards the comic books, maybe a little bit of guesswork in terms of what we might see in this movie. As well as just some, little kind of tidbits that they dropped in here and there. Alright, so let's get started. First off the bat, we get hit right in the face with a huge amount of 90s nostalgia with Blockbuster. That's great. Hold on a second. Since when is it the cool thing to throw back to 90s nostalgia? I don't know. I guess I just come from a generation where, the 80s was really big to kind of go back and try 80s styles and stuff like that. This whole 90s nostalgia thing has got me feeling kind of old. Not sure I appreciate it. I remember going to Blockbusters, alright? Anyway, this scene kind of serves a dual purpose. Not only does it introduce us to the time period that this movie is going to be taking place in, which is the 90s, which is kind of interesting. We haven't really seen a superhero film take place there. Again, it's going to be a little weird, I feel, to see the 90s portrayed as, the past. It is, but to a certain extent. Either way, it also kind of sets up, I guess, Carol Danvers' arrival on Earth. Here she's wearing the green and white Kree uniform. From some photos that got released prior to this trailer being dropped, we saw her with a group of other characters kind of in this green and white Kree outfit, almost like there's some sort of military squad. And this just is a throwback to the comics. This is basically the old school costume and colors for the Kree Empire. Captain Mar-Vell, his old costume looked like this. And I mean Mar-Vell, the original Captain Mar-Vell, not Carol Danvers, this Captain Mar-Vell. We'll come back to that. I'm not exactly sure what her transition over to the blue, red, and the gold costume will be. Maybe it's something to do with the Psych Magnetron, which is a Kree device which in the comics gave Captain Mar-Vell, Carol Danvers, this Captain Mar-Vell, her original power set. It's possible that in this film it might be a reference to her time as the character Binary, which is where she kind of gets her energy projection powers from. Kree traditionally aren't able to do that, which I think is going to be a big kind of reason why Captain Mar-Vell, this Captain Mar-Vell, is the one that we see being the strongest character, according to Kevin Feige, in the Marvel Universe. Either way, this scene is definitely going to be some sort of arrival for her back to Earth, her first introduction to the planet. Possibly she was knocked out of atmosphere by some sort of battle. It seems like a lot of this movie is focusing on the Kree-Skrull War, just because the Skrulls are definitely going to be in this movie, but also because that's kind of an early comic book event, major event in Marvel Comics that took place that really brought a bunch of heroes together, kind of a big crossover event. So I think this movie is definitely going to kind of take a little bit of that, but also take a little bit of the Secret Invasion storyline as well. After this scene, we start to get Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, his narration, which again kind of confirms the fact that she's part of the Kree army. In this version of the comic story, it kind of looks like the Kree are grabbing different races to kind of represent themselves in this universe, almost similar to like the Shi'ar Empire, which in Marvel, instead of being one dedicated space race, it was rather a collective of different species and races and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of what they're going for this, because in those original images, not only did we see characters who were not of Kree descent, as we see Korath, who is Ronan the Accuser's henchman in the original Guardians of the Galaxy film, and also Carol Danvers having some sort of connection to Earth. Maybe she's entirely human, or maybe she's some sort of Kree-Earth hybrid. Either way, I think this movie is definitely going to kind of take a look at her lost memories and how she's discovering the fact that she's a human again, or that she has a history on Earth, something to that effect. After this in the trailer, we kind of get a look at an autopsy scene, and it looks like they're experimenting on, or at least taking a look at the physiology of a Skrull. This is maybe right after they discovered that one of their own, one of the members of S.H.I.E.L.D. was a Skrull. This scene, very reminiscent of a scene from the comic books that kind of kicked off Secret Invasion, where it was discovered that the superhero character Elektra was actually a Skrull, and that she had been kind of replaced for some time. Then from more narration from Nick Fury, we kind of hear that he was going to hang up, or at least maybe possibly quit being a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent prior to meeting Carol danvers. This is interesting because in this scene, he has both of his eyes still, obviously a CGI, digitally de-aged version of Samuel Jackson. But I think it's interesting because I originally thought that he was going to use kind of a betrayal or something like that from a colleague, maybe the one that turns out to be a Skrull, which caused him to lose his eye and then maybe caused him to become slightly disillusioned in S.H.I.E.L.D. So it's interesting that beforehand he was actually thinking about dropping out or completely quitting S.H.I.E.L.D. altogether. The whole betrayal and reference to him losing his eye or not trusting somebody actually goes back to Captain America Winter Soldier, where Nick Fury's character actually mentions that the last time he trusted somebody, he lost his eye, which I think may happen in this movie. Maybe a reference to that based on the fact that we have Skrulls in the movie. Kind of a big tagline for Secret Invasion was who do you trust? So it might be an interesting reference if they put it in there. That being said, we might just not see him lose his eye in this movie. Who knows? He just gets the eye patch somewhere. I don't know. After this, we get a look at the memories that we talked about earlier. So all the memories that Carol Danvers has of being on Earth. We can see here that she was part of the Air Force. We see her on Nellis Air Force Base, as well as training. It's kind of a reference back to her character in the comic books, where originally she was a liaison with the Air Force with Captain Mar-Vell. And I believe later that was changed to just flat out make her part of the Air Force. Either way, that gives her kind of a little more insight into her character, characteristics like piloting, history with the military prior to being with the Kree Empire, which is pretty interesting. Again, we get kind of a reference to her not remembering. We get a look at some sort of machine that seems to be either taking away her memories or giving them back to her, perhaps. I think this is also going to be tied into how she becomes binary. But I'm leaning more towards this scene being her getting her memories back, mostly because we see the costume with the later colors, the blue, red, gold. So I think this movie is gonna culminate in her getting her full faculties or her full story back from this machine, which might be the Psych Magnetron, might be something different altogether. Either way, I think this is also going to unlock kind of her full potential in terms of powers. We're going to see exactly what makes Captain Mar-Vell such a formidable force in the Marvel Universe, especially in the MCU. Again, going back to Kevin Feige saying that she's actually going to be one of the main characters in defeating Thanos in Avengers 4, and she's also going to be the strongest character that we've seen thus far in the MCU. Going back to the memories for just a moment, there was a scene where at the end of her falling down multiple times, we see her in her Air Force costume. She falls to the ground, and then she has some sort of ability prior to kind of blacking out. She creates the energy blast or some sort of energy projection. And I think to this scene, it kind of references to me that she had some sort of power prior to being drafted into the Kree. It's possible that maybe that's a reference to going back to very, very old Marvel comics, kind of the Kree experimentation on people on Earth, giving rise to the Inhumans, which are already part of the MCU to some extent. Yes, I know Inhumans got canceled. Great, that show was terrible anyway. But the Inhumans have already shown up to be somewhat part of the MCU. Not exactly sure how Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. connects to any of this anymore. But it might be a reference to the fact that she is an Inhuman. Maybe that's why she's going to kind of, transition over into the Kree Empire and why they accept her a little bit more. But either way, it kind of shows that she might have some sort of power prior to gaining her other suite of powers as Captain Mar-Vell. Again, we get a scene of her walking with the kind of this elite Kree military squad that I mentioned earlier that appeared in the pictures. Here we don't see Korath, and nor do we see Ronan the Accuser, who was actually originally in those photos as well. Again, both of those characters being in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, so kind of a throwback to the larger MCU as a whole. Other characters that we've seen in other movies. I kind of like that. I like that it's kind of tying together a little bit more. Obviously, it looks like from the photos, Ronan's working with the Kree still, so he hasn't been outcast yet for his kind of insane beliefs or his extremist kind of views, which ended with him siding with Thanos that we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy. We then get a look at Jude Law, who's actually going to be playing Mar-Vell, who is the original Captain Marvel, the original hero who showed up on Earth, took the name Captain Marvel. He was kind of a Kree military member, but also kind of a Kree spy who was sent to Earth to kind of investigate the humans. He ended up kind of growing close to them, wanting to join them, as spacefaring characters do, Silver Surfer and plenty of other ones. But I think in this movie, he's kind of going to serve more of a mentor purpose for kind of Carol Danvers' character. He's going to be instructing her, which is probably, he's probably going to die in the movie, all right? Famously, Mar-Vell in the comics had kind of a poignant death in the Death of Captain Marvel storyline where he died of cancer. He had also been dead for a long, long time in the Marvel universe. Comics in general, people don't stay dead for too long, right? We had Superman, now we got Wolverine coming back. I mean, we have plenty of characters who have died and come back multiple times. Captain Mar-Vell, the original, he's kind of the only one that had actually stuck. Anyway, so we see them in this movie. He's actually got a human-like appearance that may be a reference to maybe him having some sort of human lineage. As we know, Kree can change kind of their skin color if they need to, some sort of slight shape-shifting ability. But traditionally, the Kree are blue, and they have kind of this scarification and stuff like that on their face. But I think this is either going to be a reference to, he's some sort of connection to humans, or maybe he has been to Earth before. Maybe he's the one that kind of adopted or recruited Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers. Recruited Carol Danvers. We're going to keep both of these names separate. We got Mar-Vell, we got Carol Danvers, right? The same character, but also not. We don't get a lot of him in this trailer, but I think he's definitely going to be a huge part of kind of training Carol Danvers to use her abilities, and maybe might be the reason she kind of goes back to Earth later on. We then get a very brief look at the Skrulls, which again, there was a photo released already that gave us a better look. They're looking pretty good. Green skin, they got the pointy ears and black clothing. They look all right. But after this, we get Carol Danvers beating an elderly woman. Definitely a hallmark of her character. No, it's probably going to be a Skrull. Skrulls, again, notoriously shape-shifting characters, which is why I think they're going to kind of draw upon the Secret Invasion storyline, possibly just normal humans being kind of replaced by Skrulls so that they can kind of set up for this conflict with the Kree. After this, we get a tiny look at Ronan the Accuser with his hammer. And then we get a look at Phil Coulson, Philbert Coulson himself. Not sure if that's the shortened version. That's his full name to me, Philbert Coulson. So we get a look. He's looking very, very 90s with his Lance Bass, Backstreet Boys In Sync hairstyle. I get that they're trying to make him look younger. Cool. He still looks kind of oddly older to me. Maybe they should have done a little bit of the de-aging to him as well. Maybe they did. I don't know. Either way, we get a brief appearance of him. It's good to see him back. I really like that character. I think he was the kind of the glue that was holding Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Together. Now that he's maybe not going to be on that show, I'm not exactly sure where they're going to go with that. That might be kind of a bad thing. But it's good to see him back. Good for the little nods and references. This might be still when S.H.I.E.L.D. was the strategic Homeland intervention, whatever, gobbledygook, that he mentioned in Iron Man 1. Again, we've seen multiple times where that hasn't been the case, where in the past people are still just calling it S.H.I.E.L.D. So who knows? We again get a look at Nick Fury and his famous beeper that appears at the end of Avengers Infinity War. I don't know why it took me so long to come up with. It's only the biggest movie of all time. But in the post-credit scene, we see Nick Fury before he gets turned to dust. Spoiler alert, I guess, for the movie that everybody should have seen already. He hits the beeper and calls forth, I guess, Captain Mar-Vell. It's going to be how she kind of comes back to Earth. And here we see the beeper again. Maybe that's the one that she gets so that he can contact her, as the one he has in Infinity War looks a little more advanced, a little more space-agey, so that he can reach out to her. And then after that, we get a look at the Kree military squad flying through space. Kind of a cool image with this blue over the mask to kind of protect all the characters from space. But also because this costume also is reminiscent of the newer look for Carol Danvers' Captain Mar-Vell uniform. She's got kind of this kind of cropped hairstyle, this the mohawk, which for a brief time she recently had in the comic books. As for her look in the movie, she kind of has her original traditional long hair kind of look combined with a newer style of costume that she's only recently kind of adopted, but kind of matches the original costume worn by Mar-Vell when he was Captain Mar-Vell. Either way, she also has the Rachel, which is a Friends reference, I guess. It's her hairstyle. So again, 90s, yay! After this, we then get another brief display of Danvers using her energy projection abilities while wearing her Air Force outfit. Again, this might be a reference to her being able to use her powers prior to joining the Kree, or it might just be some sort of mental thing, like she has some sort of mental battle to get her memories back, and she has all of the abilities that she already has. Then we take a look at, again, another scene. Here we can actually see the shirt that she was wearing while she was training, U.S. Air Force Academy. So again, confirming that she was part of the Air Force prior to joining the Kree. And then finally, right before the title card, we get a brief look at Danvers really powering up with this energy. Again, this is probably the time that I'm really going to delve deep into her other character. Besides Captain Mar-Vell, a character, or a moniker rather, that she took on known as Binary. And the character of Binary, really the only difference between when she was Captain Mar-Vell and this iteration of her is that she can kind of just really absorb fundamental energy. Essentially, this is the strongest she pretty much has ever been in the comics. She really gets the power to generate the amount of energy that a star has. So really, again, ramping up kind of her abilities and her powers, making her a much more extreme character, possibly, than she is in the comic books. After she became Binary in the comics, she occasionally would tap into those powers again here and there, but it gave her kind of an entirely new look, which is kind of what we see in the trailer here at the end. But also just, it's a nice little throwback to her character. I'm sure fans of her character will definitely appreciate that. But it also is kind of a way to bring her into a higher power tier, not only in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but just as a character in general. So that's it. A bunch of cool stuff. We took, 18, almost 20 minutes breaking down this little 2-minute teaser that we got. I personally was really excited to get this trailer. I was really interested to see what this movie was going to look like, being a little bit skeptical at first, but now I'm very on board, very excited for this film. Captain Mar-Vell is going to drop in March of 2019. Hopefully we will get a little more as this progresses. Hopefully it's just going to snowball. We're going to get more looks, more photos, stuff like that. So definitely tune in here at Nerd Network. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can catch all of our updates. We've got top 10s, we've got gameplays, and we're definitely going to come out with more trailer breakdowns. So thanks for hanging with us, and we'll catch you next time.